I just read Harry Potter within the past year for the first time.
Wait, you know they made movies, right?
God. Thanks, Alex.
Welcome to the Macross Delta Recap Show, Episode 12. This is EXO, along with the anime expert that knows everything from Apiju to Pikachu. Celia
Oh
Rose.
no.
You find something that rhymes with Apiju.
Hello.
And mecha expert who doesn't mind blowing up 500,000-year-old structures, Chad.
Hi, excuse me. Hi, everybody.
Ah!
I'm here. I'm alive.
Chad dies.
I'm just so excited to be here.
Chad, what was your overall reaction to this episode?
Um, a little bit mixed, actually. I mean, it is a good episode to, I guess, sort of build up tension, which it does quite well. And you get this feeling that everything is coming to a head, and it's like the stakes are really high, and the enemy is really powerful, and that's what Macross does really well, actually. There wasn't actually that much that happened in the episode. It was sort of like a lot of setup for something that's to come. And I thought that we might get some sort of sequence in the later part of the episode, but it turns out it's going to happen next episode, which is fine. This was a really good setup episode for everything that was going on. But yeah, there wasn't that much happening. So I was at the end of the episode, I remember enjoying the episode very much while I was watching it because it was giving you that feeling of anticipation. But then when I got to the episode, I was like, "Oh damn, I have to wait till next episode." So little bit of a letdown, actually.
Yeah, pretty much the same. Like, I enjoyed watching it, but I also got very strong vibes that they were just moving pieces in place for what's to come. And the ending part of it that I found really impressive was really like a pretty short sequence, anyways. Like, I don't think it's more than a minute. And then the screen fades out to the ending theme. And I was kind of let down also. Like, wait a minute, we're not going to see anything. But that means, though, that we'll be anticipating next week's episode a lot now that we know what the Delta Squadron is up against.
And this episode I actually liked. It gets stuck between the big action scene next week and last week pretty heavy funeral episode, I guess you could say. But overall there was a lot of information in this one that I kind of enjoyed, and we'll get into that later. This one, it starts off with the post-credit scene, and then they add more into it. The Sigur Valance enters Alstrahal's perimeters with the Windsinger's voice blasting across the Brisinger globular cluster. Many of Alstrahal's inhabitants are affected by the VAR, including most of the Nuns' fleet protecting it. Altrahal falls in less than 15 minutes. Others in the globular cluster can hear the Windsinger's voice, including Delta Team. Royd is impressed by the power of the combined protoculture technology that they just used against the new UN Spacey forces. Celia, is that vindication on Royd's face?
I don't know. They gave him kind of a weird expression in that scene. I wasn't sure if it was like delight or if it was just kind of a weird face. Like it was either delight or just like this weird, uncertain expression that he had. So I'm not entirely sure what he was going for, especially because we know he's conflicted anyways with using Heinz to achieve his stuff. But we also know he's super into the protoculture. Like he's a huge protoculture nerd. So who knows?
With his protoculture glasses.
I think maybe he was just, yeah, I think maybe he was just nerding out in a certain way. Just impressed, in awe, also feeling a little haughty, like, yeah, I knew this was going to happen and this is awesome and this is what we were meant to do kind of thing and blah, blah, blah. I was just having like a moment where he was in it, which is weird because he's never been farther away from being in it as far as like the Windermereans chain of command and everything like that. He's pretty much been taken out of everything at this point, which is really weird. I don't understand exactly why they made that move yet. I guess
Which move?
we'll just getting rid of Roy. There was no real reason given by any of them, Grammy or Keith or anybody, for Roy to be taken out of everything at this point, especially given that he's been like so involved in everything Windermere up until this point in the conflict. And then the last episode, he just gets completely removed and Gromia totally takes over. And it's like, what is happening here? And it's really odd. I find it really odd. And I'm convinced that there's definitely something else going on there.
Yeah, it's weird that they took him off the project, but they're still keeping him around. Keith said in the last episode that Royd's plans are moving too slowly for Keith's gains, and I know Gramia told him that because of his uncertainty that he's booting him off the project and taking over, but those aren't like real reasons to boot him off the project.
Yeah.
But they're still keeping him around, and I don't know if it's because he's Heinz's retainer or if they just want him there in case they may need his protoculture knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy that researched protoculture for his entire life, right? I guess seeing his research become fruitful kind of gives him some kind of happiness, but at the same time, it's not the way that he plans it out. But yeah, I could see how you said that he was nerding out and just seeing the power that it's even more than what he expected. I mean, taking Al Shahal in 15 minutes is pretty incredible. All right, so in the scene after the opening, we see the survivors from Annex planets arrive at Ragna, and they rally forces with the Delta crew and the rest of the Elysian crew. Most of the personnel seem to know each other from past experiences. Captain Johnson is briefing the Chaos Force that got together there and tells them the plan to attack the sugar balance at Al Shahal. Someone asks why they're not attacking Windermere, and Johnson explains that the King and the Windsingers aboard the 5,000-year-old ship, and since the Delta team is practically immune to the VARs, they'll be heading the operations. With Molders staying with the operations team, Mirage is promoted to the new Delta team leader and will be leading the squad in battle. What do you think of Mirage heading up the Delta team?
I think it's pretty much what she's been moving towards. I think Ara's been pretty confident in Mirage for quite a while now, even if him and Messer and whatnot are trying to get more out of them. But I think that they've been pretty confident in that she's going to be someone to lead the team. She's the obvious choice at this point, kind of thing, right? So I think that was a while coming. I don't think that was any big surprise. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly how she's in the later part of the episode. We'll see more about Mirage's got planned. But I think that the big challenge, of course, will be in like combat than anything else. I think I'm not sure if they have anything particularly leadership worthy written for her other than that. But we'll see. We'll see where it goes. I did like that they gave little bits of exposition to try to help you understand exactly how many forces were aligning here, because they did mention specifically that there were chaos reinforcements came in from all around the cluster. So it sounded like most of the chaos company was like amassing here on Ragna. And then they did mention that there were also survivors from various other planets and former nuns and from like New UN Spacey and whatnot. So yeah, so I think that's good that they sort of mentioned that, because it kind of gives you the impression that even though the Windermereans have like struck pretty lethal blows and they probably control the majority of the forces in the cluster now, there is a significant amount of forces available to the Chaos and Delta Squadron. It's good. It's awesome. It just lets you know that there's the chance for like a real conflict.
Yeah, Ragna's like the last planet standing as far as the Delta team and the new UN Spacey, right? Because Al Shahal and Ragna were the last planets last week, and they just
Yep.
took over Al
They
Shahal.
just took over Al Shahal, and it looks like the new unified government is finally getting involved in some manner or another in this episode. And that, like I said, well, it's kind of weird that they let everything go really bad before actually doing anything significant. But yeah, we'll see what becomes.
I like that instead of picking a new character to fill Messer's position, they moved a familiar character into it. Because I know that was one thing that when the screenshots came out, there was a little bit of speculation over like who people were. I remember the one of Walkyrie in particular, where like you have a guy on the very far end of the Walkyrie lineup while they're in the middle of this briefing, and like questioning, is he an actual character or is he just a background guy? And I'm glad that they didn't give us another character, especially because we're almost at the halfway point in the series, and I think it'd be difficult to make us care about him at that point and to keep track of him too, since we have such a big cast anyways.
They could just kill him off.
Oh god. Obligatory red shirt for Delta Squadron.
How they're gonna handle it? I mean, they couldn't handle it the last time they went up against the Aerial Knights, and then for them to just be moved up, and then now there's only three of them that's gonna be flying because Molders is staying behind with operations. So I don't know if that's a good decision. To me, that's another one of Molders' very laxed way of saying, "Yeah, we're all gonna be fine. Don't worry about it," you know. But yeah, Messer's not fine. He's got a big hole in his chest. So back on the Sigurd Valance, Heinz goes up to King Gramia and he's kind of like, I'm ready. Let's talk Ragnar already. And then Gramia is kind of like, resting is part of your duty. Just relax. And then he's all like, proud of you, son. And Heinz gets this huge smile in his face. And then we cut to Royd approaching Keith and Balger. And it's funny because when you hear Royd's footsteps, you see Keith's face and he's just kind of like, oh, shit. It's this guy. And then outside, they discuss Heinz again and how he might not be healthy enough to be doing this constantly. Royd is convinced that the power of the protoculture is enough to sit them down with the new UN Spacey and discuss the terms, but Keith is out for blood. He wants revenge for tainting the wind. Okay, so yeah, in a later scene, King Garmia asks who's in charge of the Chaos team, and they tell him that it's Ernest Johnson, a name that he recognizes.
At this point, I'm starting to get maybe not completely bored, but Royd and Keith don't seem to be arguing about anything new. Even before the subs came out, when they were arguing, I was like, okay, are they fighting over Heinz again? And then the subs came out, and sure enough, they're fighting over Heinz again. They're doing a really good job of letting us know just how little Keith cares about his little brother, um, and how badly he wants to achieve his own goals. But I don't know. I don't feel like I got like I don't know. It just didn't have the same impact as like the first time that they argued over it versus this time.
I agree. When the scene started, I'm like, are they really gonna fight about this again? But it seems like it was a setup just so Royd could say that last line, and that would make us think like, huh, what does he mean by that?
Yeah, I have no idea what he means by the new wind blowing through the galaxy.
Like he has his own plan going that doesn't include the rest of the Windermereans. It sounds like.
I've always thought that for the last 5 or 6 episodes, they've been setting Royd up for some sort of maneuver, and I still don't know exactly what it is because we just haven't seen anything of Royd's. Like, if he's got some sort of alternative power base or some alternative sort of schemes or something like that, we've never caught any wind, to say, we've never caught wind of any of it. So I don't exactly know what they're doing with the Royd character. He's a bit of an enigma, and I think if I'm reading it correctly, it might be a weakness in the writing. Just that we don't necessarily know enough about the motives of both Royd and the other Windermerians towards Royd. I mean, the only one we know is Keith, and his motives are like they're pretty one-dimensional. I mean, the guy just wants revenge for like whatever real or imagined slights he thinks that all, the new new unified government has done against him or his people, right? And that's pretty much it. We don't even really understand why Keith hates Royd so much, other than the fact that maybe he thinks Royd moves too slow for a Windermerian when they should be moving faster. And Royd is like all about forward progress. But other than that, it's not really explained why they're at each other's throats so much, and it isn't even explained why Royd is really all that, cautious about Heinz. Like, yeah, he's looking out for him and whatnot, but is that supposed to be for some purpose, or is it just because it's in stark contrast to how careless Keith is about Heinz? I'm not really sure if I'm understanding that whole relationship between all those characters correctly, or if there's enough that's been written in the script so far to sort of solidify what's going on between the three of them. But yeah, I definitely think that Royd is going to be doing something soon. There's going to be some maneuver, some sort of about face or betrayal or something like that involving Royd and some of the other characters for sure. I just don't know for what reasons yet, and what form that will take. I think that's the thing that's got me most curious is when these characters, either Gramia or Royd or Keith or whatever, make their move, in what form is that going to take and how? And to what end? I can't really see it coming from the Windermerian side because they have already marginalized Royd. So I think it's got to be from his side. He's got to be the one to make some sort of major move that will, I guess, propel his story forward.
We kind of have an idea of what Royd's deal is, 'cause he's a little bit more diplomatic than the rest of the Windermerians. The Windermerians are out for revenge, but he's like, we could sit down with the UN Spacey and hash this out. We have enough. There's a way for them to look at us as equals.
Yeah, well, his motive has always been like to seize control of the Brasinger cluster, but that's clearly not what Gramia and Keith and everybody else have
Yeah.
in mind. They want to go like several steps beyond, and I think it's going to come to a point where Royd's going to like have like almost like a moral problem with what they're doing. And I think maybe that's why he's so attached to Heinz. I mean, he sees Heinz as like maybe the biggest casualty of this whole affair. And I think that's maybe what will push him to act or something like that. I'm not really sure. I'm very curious to find out.
It is kind of sad because they're just using Heinz, and there's no one that's like watching out
For
for
him,
him.
yeah, Royd's the only one, and they've managed to like
Yeah,
take him out, like remove him from
he's
the game, sort of thing. Which is
Mhm.
just a weapon.
yeah, it is sad actually. It is kind of tragic, and the most tragic part about it, I think, is the fact that Heinz is so completely innocent of it. Like he just hasn't got a clue, about how much he's being used and how little anybody in this whole scenario cares for him. I mean, they'll at this point it seems like Grommy and Keith will easily sacrifice Han's life whenever it suits their needs. They don't even care at this
And Heinz
point.
just wants to make them proud.
And yeah, Heinz just wants them to be proud of him, which is tragic because he's just too young, I guess, too young and too unaware and just doesn't know what's going on.
So we continue on with Ragna. We see Machina and Reina checking in on Freya. And then on the bridge of the Legion, we see Captain Johnson, Molders, and Kaname discussing Windermere's impending attack on Ragna when they were called up to meet with a Major Lori Valen, who is delivering a message from the new UN Spacey. If the Windermereans need the protoculture ruins from Ragna to achieve their plans, then let's blow up the ruins. Done. Problem solved. Johnson doesn't think this is a good idea, but the plan has already been called into action. The charges are already being set as they speak.
That just seems like a really bad idea.
They're just gonna
You
blow up
know,
a 500,000-year-old, ruin. Who needs
well,
that?
not just, these 500,000-year-old, at least 500,000-year-old ruins, but Kaname said that there are energy shafts that are close to the core of the planet that are attached to these ruins. This is just probably the worst thing that New You and Spacey could think of. Be like, let's blow up these ruins that are attached to a
Yeah.
giant source of energy. Like that couldn't go wrong at all. Not.
And then also in the shot where they're putting on the charges, you see all the jellyfish just swimming around those people ready to blow up the ruins. And it's kind of sad because we know about those jellyfishes, right?
It's just it's just a horrible idea.
It's pretty inconsiderate. If anything, it actually plays into the Windermereans' perception of the new unified government than anything else. Because it's
Yeah.
such a dangerous and stupid idea for the Rognons and also like the Earthlings who have settled there as well. And basically for everybody who's there. It's just, there's even characters later in the episode that talk about they're not wanting to leave Ragna and this is their home and everything else. And it's just like there seems to be like no consideration from the new unified government at all for any of that. They seem like just nonchalant about the whole thing. It's like, yeah, we're confident there won't be any like collateral damage and stuff like that. We're just gonna go ahead and do it. And it's like, what is this? Yeah, so I think they're meaning the new unified government. I think they're starting to see what kind of threat the Windermerians represent, and the fact that they have really screwed up by not getting seriously involved until this point when it's already almost too late. And so I think they're willing to sacrifice a lot of stuff in order to make sure that the Windermerians don't get what they want, which seems really stupid to me, but we'll see how it plays out. I'm pretty sure that the series is kind of writing it that way as well. Um, and we'll probably see that it's probably not gonna play out the way the new unified government wants it to either. I think this is an operation that's set up for failure.
Well, and even the way Major Valen comes in and he's talking to Captain Johnson, he's not coming in to negotiate. It's just to tell you this is what's going to happen.
This is what's
And
happening, yeah.
To
yeah,
save face.
yeah, when Captain Johnson's like, "Well, Lady M won't go for it." And he's like, "That's why I'm telling you. So you can tell her so that it saves face for your organization when you have to explain what happened." Like it's just everything about this plan sounds like a really bad idea.
Not to mention the guy looks like a
Oh,
douchebag,
he
right? He was just
does.
like,
He looks like a
this guy's
total
so
tool.
sleazy.
Yeah.
I want to bring up, yeah, one of the messages. This was a comment by Brandon Hill about the last episode. He's just kind of going over about why haven't they sent in more fleet from Earth space to back up the Chaos crew? And we got into this discussion, and I said most likely they're trying to avoid sending a fleet over to this part to a whole other almost galaxy, right? Because it's a separate cluster from the Milky Way. And I said to him, they're most likely going to try to solve it without sending any more personnel. I said they're probably going to wait it out and see who wins the war and then make a deal with whoever wins, just to save money because that takes money to send people across the galaxy, even with full technology. Like no corporation, no nation wants to spend that money. So this validates that thinking where they're just like, they want that, then let's just blow it up and done. Easy peasy, right? It's just kind of like what you expect from corporations and apparently nations. And
Like I said, I just think it makes them look really bad. Just a terrible idea all around. We also had this brief moment where Arad informs Chuck that Lady M has spoken to the new unified
Oh, yes, that's pretty
nation
important.
Spaceys and convinced them to delay the demolition of the protoculture ruins on Ragna until after the Chaos counterattack has been completed. So it's just a little bit that indicates that Chaos has some level of autonomy, even in the face of the new unified government coming in and saying this is going to be that. And it also kind of shows the influence of Lady M, I think, almost more than anything else, and that she can, talk to the new unified government and say, okay, hey, let's do something else here. Let's try this first. And then if that doesn't work, then you guys can have your, stupid plan. So she's at least operating behind the scenes, and we still don't know who she is, but it's clear that she's got quite a bit of influence and or respect and or notoriety, whatever. Apparently, her word carries a lot of weight. That might give an indication of who she is, considering, but I don't know if there's nothing yet, nothing substantial yet, but it obviously is somebody important if they can make the new unified government sort of change its mind or at least even delay its plans. She must be pretty impressive.
all right, so on the deck of the Ether, while Mirage is trying to study how to fight the White Knight, she's unexpectedly joined by Freya and Hayate. She doesn't know how to show herself and instead decides to eavesdrop on their conversation. Much like when Freya was discovered by Mirage and Hayate in the previous episodes, the tables are turned and Mirage was betrayed by her communicator to the other two. There's a lot of confirmations in these scenes about how they affected each other when they teamed up and how they seem important to each other with the situation that they are currently in. Yeah, so I was just thinking about like it's not really leading towards kind of like a love triangle, but just how important they are to each other as far as colleagues or friends. Is that something that I'm not getting, or is that something that the show is putting forward?
I feel like this felt like more of a romantic triangle like thing than the gossip with Hayate and Mirage that we had in the past. Because Mirage actually like hides, and she even says to herself, she's like, "Why am I hiding?" And she hides for like a good 5 minutes, while they're talking to each other. And at that point, if she showed up, she'd just embarrass herself. Like really, she could just pretend that she's walking in on them. But it felt a little bit more like that. I think some of the language that Hayate was using, where he's saying words like daisuki and that kind of thing, like, I really love your songs, is enough to like, it embarrassed and flattered Freya, I think, to be like, I love your songs, and using such a strong word as daisuki. I didn't feel it from Hayate and Freya necessarily, but Mirage's response kind of gave it more of that romantic drama feel. Still not, I don't think, in full effect that we had like in previous series, like in Frontier, for example. But yeah, I think her hiding and kind of freaking out, like, oh no, what do I do? Kind of gave it that feeling just a little bit more than we had before.
Yeah, that's the thing. That's why I'm asking because I feel like I'm missing so much, like with the inflections or maybe the language used. I'm like, am I getting everything that I'm supposed to? Because when I watched the Raw, it seemed that way, like especially when Mirage was like, Imo manajate, and I was like, what's she saying? Is she telling him that she's into him? you know, it's a lot more fun sometimes the Raw.
Yeah, I think the issue is not so much that they haven't been focusing on the love triangle. I mean, they have pretty much every episode, and they include at least one or two scenes that lets the audience know that there is something going on between these characters. I think the real problem with the love triangle at this point in the series is just that it hasn't moved anywhere. It's been in a holding pattern, so to speak, for quite a while, where it's still unspoken flirtations and hidden glances and cutesy kind of oh, I like him but I can't say anything kind of thing. And that's been going on for a lot of episodes now, and it's sort of like, well, if we're going to be moving this thing along, it should start to take some shape here, pretty soon. Maybe even it should have done it like an episode or two ago and really upped the stakes. Let someone in the love triangle start to reach out to another one in a big way and let them know that there is something that's going on. Because right now it's just below the surface and nobody's actually saying or committing to anything. So as a result of that, the love triangle can't actually move forward. All it can do is stay in this, like I said, this sort of like shy, cutesy little, oh God, what am I going to do? I like him, but I can't say anything kind of thing. And it's that you can't go very far on that. Someone has to actually take action or get involved or risk hurting someone else's feelings for the dramatic tension to ramp up to the next level and to make this love triangle like move forward in a, in a compelling way. I think that, at least that's how I look at it right now.
It's upsetting to me because, I didn't know there was such a thing as a shipping war back when Frontier was airing, and now it's my chance to get in on it, and they're just bringing me down. They're not including me.
Oh,
You
there
had
are
high hopes.
plenty. There are plenty of Hayate Freya shippers right now.
Yeah, but it's all fan fiction, man. I thought it was about, like proof and did you see that? Did you hear what she said?
Yeah, basically their proof at this point is because Hayate and Freya have such high sync rates. Like that's when the ships really started and you started seeing more fan art of the two. And so they're like, ah yes, they resonate together. Okay, well Keith and Mesa resonated together. Where's my shipping fan art? You know? But yeah, I agree with Chad though that I feel like our triangle is at this point very stagnant. It's not really going anywhere or seeming to develop into anything new.
But you said that Hayate used the word love, so I'm shipping it. Ship it.
Daisuke Utta, her songs.
Oh, her songs.
Yes.
Yeah, but
Damn it.
he's not saying exactly. It's about her songs, and he's also not saying it in that way, right? That's just like it's again, it's like it's a love triangle that's being written like it's trying to have its cake and eat it too, right? Without actually committing to anything. There's a distinct lack of dramatic tension that needs to start happening with these three characters. Otherwise, the love triangle it's just not going anywhere.
Also,
Needs
does
a
nobody
surge of passion.
yes.
Needs a surge of passion into it.
Also, does nobody in Chaos have their phone on silent? Like, do they just not have that function on their communicators or anything?
Yeah. I had mixed feelings about that. I was like, what again? But then it was kind of like funny at the same time, so I forgave it.
It's a trope. It's definitely a trope.
Yeah.
The something that gives you away while you're eavesdropping on two other people that don't know you're there, and it's just it's
It,
what it
it was
is.
funny. It
It's
worked.
kind of charming, and it kind of works. But yeah, I'll
Yeah.
forgive it.
So the Macross Elysian launches, and then it goes into cruiser mode, and that scene was just fantastic. They fold into Alshahal space, only to find out that King Gramia has already readied his troops to fold into attacking Ragna. What's gonna happen after this battle? Because it seemed like it's an all-out battle that's gonna happen 13 episodes in. What could be in store?
I think more than the battle itself, I think the battle of between Valkyrie and the Windsinger, and also I think Royd's move, whatever that happens to be, is going to play a bigger part than the actual battles itself. Because at this point, like the way they've written the series so far, the Windermereans have pretty much all but won. This isn't, and given that this is Macross, which may be a bit of cheating, we know that it's not going to be a military victory. We know it has to be a cultural or musical victory at this point because it's just the forces are just completely overwhelming. I mean, the Windermereans might as well be the Zentradi with a fleet of 5 million for all intents and purposes. It's the same sort of thing. So the only way that you're going to win in this point is by some sort of a musical victory. So I think that Mikumo keeps talking about she's waiting for that wind to happen, where she can access the ruins and whatnot, because she has been getting more and more involved with that each battle that goes on. And the last one time we saw them get involved, they had like a major breakthrough where both her and Freya were almost taken into like some sort of other dimension or something like that at the time. So if Heinz is the Windsinger that is using all these abilities through the protoculture ruins and through the Sigurd Valens and everything like that, if Makumo and Freya start accessing it, they could turn the entire flow of the battle around completely in like one fell swoop, which I'm pretty sure is what's going to happen. Or maybe not entirely, but they will do enough damage that it will cause some sort of major problem for the Windermereans, and they'll have to retreat or regroup, or something will happen. So I think that's what's going to be going down. At least that's definitely what's been set up on the Valkyrie side. The Chaos side, it looks to me like Johnson's been outmaneuvered. It looks to me like he definitely underestimated Gromia. He was sort of the opinion that he's not much of an opponent, and he doesn't have what it takes to be a fleet commander, and blah 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 blah. And they thought that they were being so clever by going on the attack, which is, it turns out, was Gramia's genius, because he knew what kind of a person Johnson was. And as soon as he heard that Johnson was the one in command of the Chaos Forces on Ragna, I bet Gramia was thinking, okay, I know this guy. When he's back into a corner, he's going to charge aggressively. So he's going to come out fighting. So what we're going to do is we're going to wait for them to do that, and then we're going to jump ahead of them. We're going to take the initiative back. And so, yeah, I think that was a real miscalculation on Chaos's part for sure.
What I'm wondering is why they haven't consulted with Freya on Windermerian abilities. Because we know as an audience that their runes are very sensitive, and Gromia sensed the Elysian entering fold. He sensed them coming, and then that's when he's like, that's it, this is our time, we're gonna go. But what
So
I'm wondering though is why they didn't talk to Freya about any of this to fully understand how the Windermerians like work, like what their strengths are and how the runes even work at all. I would like to think that after Messer's death and the way that he fought Keith, maybe starting to consider that like these abilities are greater than they initially thought, considering the way that Keith fought with him, and learning more about it so they can be better prepared.
well, I don't think that anybody, like, I think at this point, and maybe this is my interpretation, which is different than other people watching the show, but I didn't think that these abilities were necessarily like Gramia's abilities and Heinz's abilities and stuff like that. I didn't think that they were necessarily Windermerian so much as they were amplified by the protoculture technology that they're utilizing.
But they're sensing it with their runes.
They're using their own abilities to sense it, but I don't think that they have like their abilities, their native born Windermere abilities. I don't think they have the sort of the range and power of what we're seeing in the series. I think that has to do with the protoculture. I think they're using the Sigur Valens and whatnot, and they're using the Shrine of Time, yeah, and the protoculture ruins on the various planets and stuff like that. They're using all of that in order to achieve their ends. So I think it's understandable that nobody really understands, like anybody on the outside, meaning Chaos or the new unified government or anyone else. I think it's understandable that they don't understand the extent of the Windermerians' abilities and what they can do, because
Mhm.
they don't, on their own they can't do that, but through the protoculture's technology, it's amplifying everything they can do and giving them maybe even new abilities that they never had before. I think that's why they were unprepared for what's going on, right? Because ordinarily they would have known that about the Windermerians, but because of the protoculture factor, they have no idea.
I'm with Celia though. They should just cut Freya open and see what's inside those damn things.
No, that wasn't my argument.
Oh yes,
I'm with you all the way, Celia.
oh yes, it was.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah,
Alexis for dissecting Freya.
yeah.
I do
Oh yeah,
not stand by
yeah.
that statement.
I just want to cut your hair.
I don't endorse that. Actually, I made a comment on that on Twitter. Like, what do the Windermerians do when they have to cut their hair? Like, look how long Heinz's runes are. What if he gets a haircut? Like, what happens?
You obviously don't cut that part because it's a gross little organ at the end of your.
It's a gross little organ. Oh my god. Oh, I do want to mention something else that we missed during the scene with Freya Hayate and Mirage in the shadows spying on them. They did briefly discuss Hayate's necklace,
That's
Yes.
and
true.
that it was inherited from his dad, who sent it from some unknown planet. Hayate admits that he doesn't know the name, only that his dad was a military man and moved around a lot, but he sent it to him from a certain planet. I remember watching the sequence today and thinking to myself, are they just being mysterious because they don't want to reveal what that thing is yet and at this time? Or are they
Hmm.
trying to make a connection between this and some earlier Macross series? Like, was his dad stationed on some particular planet that we've already seen in a previous Macross show, and we're supposed to put two and two together? You know, like because it looks like a piece of fold quartz. So I'm immediately thinking, you know, it's Macross Frontier, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking, was his father stationed on like Gallia 4 or something like that?
It reminded me of two things. First was a message from last week asking if, maybe it's from Windermere. And we know those soldiers on Windermere training the Windermereans how to fight
Yes.
or how to fly. And then when he did mention it, I quickly rewound to the photograph to see if any of them looked like Hayate. And no, none of them had blue hair. So I was like, all right, maybe not. It did like put up some flags about where's he pointing this towards, or if it's pointed towards anything in the previous, episodes or previous series.
I feel like they're putting a bunch of like flashing arrows at the necklace though. Like remember what Captain Arad said in I can't remember which episode number it was, but he says that he's connected to Windermere. Like
Yeah.
fate has connected him to Windermere anyways. Since he has this connection with Freya now. And since we already know that Arad was somewhat familiar with Hayate's dad, like I think he recognized the necklace in the first place when he first met Hayate. But at this point, we can basically confirm that he knew his dad at some point because of that line he did say in a previous episode. If you saw him now, you'd be so proud of him. I do think it's neat that Gromia and Captain Johnson are going to face off again. When Captain Johnson was talking about him earlier in the episode where he said that he was a trainer for the forces on Windermere before the War for Independence and that he knew Gromia because he was his student. But they didn't see eye to eye anyways. It sounded like they had a lot of ideological clashes, and now they're meeting each other in a giant ideological clash with giant ships this time, instead of just teacher and student disagreeing in class.
And now the student is the master. What did you guys think of the transformation sequence?
It was amazing.
It was really cool.
It was so good. It was really good just to see the Elysion like finally, get like launched into action. And then when it did, it like lifted off of the planet while it was in its, fortress mode and then, transforms into cruiser mode. And yeah, that was amazing. Plus the cruiser mode looks really, really good. It looks way better than the Macross Quarter ever did. So yeah, so it's a very striking sort of design. Very kind of similar, I guess, to the original in some respects, in that it's got like these two big, prominent, forward sections that almost look like guns in and of themselves. Yeah, so it's kind of cool. Except that instead of joining them together, they sort of sit separately. But yeah, it's a very cool design. I really like it. I think it's great. I also noticed that the bridge, we got a very, very good look finally at the bridge of the Elysion from the outside, the exterior shot of it. And it is quite different than anything else that we've had in Macross before. I am actually very impressed with it. I was expecting them to go something a little bit more traditional. I mean, it is still like a big thing with a glass sort of viewport in front, but within that, it's quite different. It's visually very, very distinct. I really liked it. I thought it was, yeah, it looked really cool.
I can't wait for the Blu-ray release so I can actually get a nice screenshot of the Elysian lifting off and add it to my wallpapers folder.
So that's the end of the episode. Do you know what the next one's called?
Yeah, it's called passionate diving or something, or passion diving or something like that, I think.
Cool. So let's do a couple of messages. So Celia, you want the first one?
I'll start with Sean's then. Sean Salisbury on Facebook says, I feel sorry for Mirage as I would not want the Delta 2 call sign after Messer just died. Yeah, that's kind of a good point. I don't know if I'd want that either after the person who had it just died. But it's an honor.
Yeah.
You
She's
have to, yeah, you have to
becoming
take it in
Messer.
the right way. Yeah, you have to take it in the right way, and instead of looking, it all depends on like whether you look at it pessimistically or optimistically, right? I mean, you could look at it that way that, you got to fill his shoes and stuff like that, but you could also look at it as like, I'm going to do honor to, his memory and everything that he represented it by, doing leading these people well and doing justice to the call sign.
I think it's an indication too of what Arad sees in Mirage. Like Mirage says in this episode that she doesn't think she has any talent whatsoever as a pilot, and that she tries and tries and doesn't really get anywhere besides average. But Arad sees something in her that is worthy of being first lieutenant, team leader in Delta 2.
Yeah, hopefully she pulls it off soon.
I think a determination more than anything else is what is impressive. I mean, even in spite of all the things that Mirage might think about herself and how she can't live up to her family and blah 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 whatnot, through it all, she constantly shows determination. Like over and over and over again. She's determined to get better at what she does. She takes in criticism and builds on it. Every time that she's been given an opportunity to do something, she takes the initiative and learns like she did it this episode. It's like she's sitting there studying ways on how to defeat the White Knight. I mean, she might sell herself short in the talent department and whatnot, but there is no one more determined. And I think that's why Arid is so not concerned about the Delta Squadron at all, because he probably figures that if anybody can figure out how to defeat the White Knight, it'll be Mirage, because she never gives up. She just constantly is striving, trying to prove herself. And maybe it's for the wrong reasons, but the end results are the fact that she's continually there, and she'll never let her team down. She'll always try and figure out some way, to make things work, to win the day, kind of thing. I think that's what's got her to where she is.
So realistic angle on her character, like the third generation of like these awesome genius pilots, and it's so much to live up to, like we've seen that with other people in real life. So I kind of like that they included that in her character. Let's go on to the next message. This one is not really a question. He just wanted to share something. This is from Alexis de las Alas from YouTube. One thing to point out, I noticed the way Walker sang Giraffe Blues was hauntingly sad. When Makuma started singing, I started getting goosebumps. But when Kaname started singing, damn, tears rolled down my cheeks. Not kidding. It was sad. Yeah, that's a really good moment in
Oh,
that
same though.
episode. Yeah, when Kaname started singing, I was just like, it grabs you, you know.
Same though. I cried too.
Windermere's new ship could be their very own Macross. This could be similar to the original Macross, where the Supervision Army's ship, which becomes the SDF-1 Macross, jump-started humanity's technology. So Royd could be hating on humanity because he believes that Windermere should have been the ones to fully analyze theirs, reverse engineer it like humanity did, and spread to the stars first, and then unite the different species under them. Kind of like what humanity is doing currently in Delta.
Yeah, I suppose if you want to look at it that way. I think they probably don't look at it that way. I think part of the Windermerean like existential crisis, at least the way they're written, is the fact that they live a short period of time, and so they might, as a result, be very short-sighted people. That might explain why I don't know, maybe they feel exploited by the new unified government. Maybe one of the reasons they feel that way is because they can't see things as long term or can't build things over long periods of time like Earthlings can. They have to do everything in a very brief, very short period of time because their lifespans literally depend on it. So they have to be impulsive. They have to be sort of like, irrational and, rush into things and not do too much thinking about stuff because it's just, for them, life is literally over in the blink of an eye. So maybe maybe they could do that with this. Maybe it could be their sort of crashed alien spaceship one sort of thing. But I don't think that the Windermerans at this point think of it that way. I think they look at it as a means to an end, kind of like how they've been dealing with everything. At least how Grami and Keith see things. Heinz is a means to an end. The protoculture vessel is a means to an end. The Bersinger cluster is a means to an end, so on and so forth, right? I don't think they've put a lot of forethought into anything else other than that.
Cool. So that's the last of the messages. So we'll see you next week for episode 13, Passionate Diving. Celia, where can we find you when you're not on the Macross Delta recap show?
You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Celia Rose Cosplay and on Twitter at Planets Twinkle. I just got my Mikumo costume in the mail this week, so
Ooh,
hopefully I'll be putting some makeup test photos up on my Facebook soon. I'm super pumped. I've been waiting forever for this costume to get here.
cool. We're on that. Planets Twinkle on Twitter. Chad, where can we find you?
Oh, you can find me at marchingcw at hotmail.com. You can, of course, visit my website, the Macross Mecha Manual, and you can see me on Facebook at facebook.com/Macross Mecha Manual. Oh, and lastly, I also post at various anime message boards such as Anime Nation, ANN, and Macross World.
And this is EXO. You could find me on the Macross World Facebook page or the Macross Delta Facebook page, or you could tweet at me at Macross Tweet, the official Macross World Twitter account. And that's it. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Yay!